everybody, and welcome. Today's episode, we're talking to a wonderful man, a friend of mine, Don Brindle, who served in our Canadian military, and throughout life went through a lot of hardship, a lot of challenges to his mental and physical health. And since this is a program about health, we need to talk about things that happen to us that go wrong no matter what we try to do. But this story ends on a happy note because, as you can see, the man sitting to my left is cool, calm, and collected, besides being pretty handsome, with a beautiful little girl in his lap called Abby. Abby happens to be his service dog, and probably the turning point in his life. So, welcome, Don.
Thank you.
And thank you for providing us with, being here today to provide us with some insight for something that hopefully most of us haven't experienced, but that far too many people have.
Mm-hmm.
You went through a pretty important military career and met some rather difficult situations, gave it your best, and still ended up getting the short end of the stick. So I'll let you talk about how it all started, the path to the downhill path, and then we'll talk about the uphill path. How's that?
All right. Long story short, I suppose, grew up rather below the poverty line in Toronto. It was part of Scarborough at the time. And decided through abuse, I kind of hid in my garage, in the garage basement of the apartment building, and just worked on a car. And it was my way of coping with some of my childhood trauma. And at that point, my dream was to be an auto mechanic. And I in grade 12 went on a co-op course and was hired immediately by a GM dealer, and I realized I love working on cars, but I didn't want to be a mechanic. So I looked into the military, and I applied as for aero engine technician. I wanted to repair planes, and they didn't have any openings for that, but recruiting centers have a way of telling you what you want to hear, and after a series of tests and battery of tests for aptitude and IQ and other things, they decided I'd be a good fit for what they call an ammunition technician. And I had no idea what the job entailed, and I wasn't really concerned because the recruiting center said if you do really good on this course, you can remuster to any trade of your life. So I thought this is a step towards my goal. Took all the training and realized that ammunition technician is one of the smallest trades in the Canadian Forces and very expensive to train you, and especially if you specialize in IED disposal, bomb disposal. And it's a restricted trade, you can't remuster out. But I enjoyed it. Obviously, through all the battery testing, I found out that I really enjoyed it, and I excelled in my trade. Promoted ahead of my peers, topped every course I've been on, and eventually was promoted to sergeant, and I was in charge of the bomb squad for CFB Toronto. It was then...
You were happy?
As my post in Toronto, I couldn't be happier. I had met my lovely wife, Heather. We had 3 beautiful kids, living in a house in Angus, and I'd travel back and forth to Toronto every day. But there was an unseen consequences to that, in that I would be called out in the middle of the night for a bomb call, get apart, be back home 6 o'clock in the morning, and not even decompress from it, and then blend into a normal family life. But that could only last so long, and it started wearing hard on my relationship. There was a series of traumatic events which, if anything, amplified or recalled trauma from being a child. And I started to turn to alcohol very bad. And it was affecting my home relationship. And I got posted back to Borden, back with my family, but I was on the road a lot. as the explosive safety inspector for a better part of Ontario. So it was a lot staying in hotels, visiting cadets and militia units, giving explosive safety lectures. But it also created a thing where I could be away from my family and drink and the base. So no one saw the changes in me. I didn't have the camaraderie from the base. And when you're posted on a base, you have a lot of functions like unit PT or beer calls or sports events or field hockey days or something like that. Because I was away from the base and working on my own for the last 4 years in the military, I didn't have that. So in 2000, at that point, I had what I now know to be PTSD, but it wasn't as noticed today. And that led to me deciding to quit an outstanding career. I was prepared to be promoted to a warrant and sent on my senior leaders course. I just topped my 6B ammo course, my career course. I had everything going for me, and I quit 14 years in. And not one question was asked. They were trying to reduce the level of horses then, and they let me out. And I spent the next 13 years overseas. And as I got out, my relationship was already struggling, and I found out 2 months later that my relationship was over with my wife. This news to me, so I ended up staying overseas, and in what I call my 14-year suicide attempt. And I've traveled to such lovely places, such as Kosovo, Egypt, Oman, Iraq, Rwanda, Afghanistan, Laos, using Sakhalinsk, Russia, in doing EOD work, going and getting rid of remnants of war from battles that have happened in some cases 100 years ago. So, I've disposed of Livens projectiles full of mustard gas from World War I. I've disposed of weapons of remnants of war up from the battle that Russia had with Japan at the end of World War II. I've destroyed 500-pound general-purpose bombs in Laos along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And unfortunately, you get into an expat mode that drinking is acceptable. Living a life of an expat is not pleasant. And a good day would be very low morals, a bottle of vodka, and to get myself to sleep, and not aware of the help that was available to me back home, because at that point I didn't know I was a veteran. The Canadian Forces only announced in 2003, I was already out, that anyone who successfully passed basic training and was honorably discharged is a veteran. But in 2000, the general consensus was you had to have been in combat. So many people didn't know they were veterans, and they had to clarify it after the Afghanistan war, that everyone is a veteran. And so it wasn't until I finally came home in 2013. At this time, I was completely alcohol dependent. My fourth wife had decided she had enough, and I was now home without a job. I'd lost my last job because of a suicide attempt, and so I was unemployed. My wife had left me, my children weren't speaking with me, and I decided to check out. And luckily, I was found and spent a month in recovery at mental health unit in RVH, who were outstanding. The nurses there couldn't be better. That's when I found out I was a veteran from one of the interns there who works for the reserves, and I called Veterans Affairs, and then I started attending group therapy sessions in the hospital. I detoxed from alcohol, which is something I can't recommend for anyone, and I've been clean and sober since that time. I got into the Veterans Affairs program, which is now, and it is a long process, and you must have lots of patience, but they've, in general, been very good to me, in helping me when required. They've put me on a program called Earned Loss Benefits, which covers income while they send me back to school. And coincidentally enough, next Tuesday I start my electrical engineer course. So I'm going back to college on Tuesday, and my aim is 2 years there, and then hopefully a year in university to get my full degree. And as I mentioned, now 3.5 years sober. This dog has been a lifesaver for me. I rarely go anywhere without her. I can't even begin. I don't believe we have the time to go through the amount of things she does to make my life better.
We do have the time.
Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, it's just, she wakes me up from, if I have a nightmare, I can drive again because my road rage from being, the time I spent in Iraq, I was the unfortunate of many attacks, IEDs on the side of the road, ambushes, and so my road rage was very high that I could not make a drive to here. Now she calms me down in the car. She wakes me up from nightmares. She reminds me to take my medicine. Anytime I have anger, even speaking on the phone, she'll come up, kiss my face, and push the phone away. She's just an outstanding little dog. I also have major depressive disorders, which sometimes you just can't move. You don't want to get out of bed. A Jack Russell will not allow that. Right? You must get up and play with her, and it's changed my life in so many ways. It's hard to really expand. I've got a fantastic relationship with my children again, and since my grandson's been born, I'm even speaking with my ex-wife on good terms now. So a lot has turned around, and it's not, and through that period, it's been a growing experience. And
before you go on, I want to say we're going to have to break shortly, but I want to. Don't get too much into Abby, because I want to talk a lot about Abby when we come back. Okay?
Okay.
So you've got 3 minutes.
No.
No pressure.
Is that
It's really hard to time these things. No, I would like to add on to that it's the magic formula, they say, for keeping your life balanced and healthy is to be of service, to feel useful, to work hard, and yet I think for anybody who might have missed that, hard as it would have been to miss in your story, you did all of those things. You dedicated your life to the military. After you left the military because you felt you could no longer handle it, you kept working, kept doing useful things, dangerous things that needed to be done that most people would not want to do. So there would have been a lot of job satisfaction there for you.
There's tremendous job satisfaction.
A lot of sense of service, but yet still.
And there's many guys like me that are out there still today. The trade of EOD, or disposal of arms of war, is something that plagues our planet and will continue to plague our planet as long as we have war. And as I mentioned, I've destroyed things back as far as World War I. And the small group of guys that are out there cleaning up this mess allow a lot of villagers, because with humanitarian demining, the ground is all wasted. They can't farm it. So the fact that we can go in there and we can teach them how to demine and clear an area, they can farm again, and they can bring back commerce to an area that was denied territory because it was landmined. So I know throughout the 13 years, and that's one of the parts of therapy, is to look back over those years on the trauma I've added to myself, and my doctor considers it complex PTSD, in that there's not one specific trauma we can nail down. They are all meshed in together. And all I did is add to it, and with my service, with the work I did overseas. But remembering the good aspects of what was done while overseas is helpful to push out the memories of the bad incidents and the friends lost, and realize that I'm not living in a combat zone for so long. Your guard is just constantly up, so you to bring it down, that realize I am in a safe spot. I don't need to be.
You're in a safe spot, and I think that once we start talking a little bit more about the one who reminds you of it every moment of the day, that it's a two-way road here, because I think that You're also the one, from what I've seen, who manages to calm little Miss Abby Jack Russell down from time to time. So we're going to break now, and when we come back, we are going to talk a little bit more about service dogs. You now have a sense of the challenge that little Miss Abby was up against when she took on this big man here. And hey, this little creature is up to the task, and stand by and hear more about it. So in some of these episodes, we talk about normalcy and the quest for normalcy and traditional healing methods and non-traditional healing methods. And among the non-traditional healing methods, but gaining more and more popularity and certainly more and more visibility, are service dogs. Service dogs come in all shapes and sizes, and they are perfect, the military is finding out, for helping veterans regain some of their dignity and quality of life that they lost through injuries. Our little team here, because we do call them teams, is a perfect example of what you might least expect in a tiny little creature like this with a big man like that, working out to keep each other out of trouble, really. So tell us about that.
Well, when I originally looked into the service dog program, it's funny, when I got out of rehab, I rescued 2 cats, and they were amazing therapy. Just gave me a reason to get up and get out of bed. At the time, I was being prescribed new medicine, and it would throw me through loops, and I didn't know what to expect, and we were trying different things, and these cats were my rock, but I still couldn't go out of the house. So I was looking into the program, and then I saw through Courageous Companions an application for service dogs. So I looked into it and applied for it, and then I was contacted by Mark Lapointe, and that was in November of 2014. And we spoke for quite a while, and we looked at a very, very thorough interview in looking at my past with dogs, what dogs I've had, my experience with dogs, my current lifestyle, what I have at home, cats, the symptoms that I have from my PTSD, which included nightmares and night terrors, extreme road rage, that I would, if cut off by someone, I would go into pure panic mode, similar to being caught in an ambush, and it limited my ability to drive because I was afraid that I would hurt someone, and just a number of items. And so Mark looked at the situation, as well as having depression. That's because there's so many different options for dogs. Someone that doesn't have the depression side can get away with a dog that's more relaxed and laid back. He looked and thought, no, you need a high energy dog that makes you have to get up every day and go play for an hour. And he also wanted something small, so that she could help me with road rage. So he said, we've got a 6-month-old Jack Russell that I think would be perfect for you. So he spent the next 6 months training her up for my specific symptoms, and we were paired in July of 2015. And that's an important time, because if you don't bond with your dog, then you have to go through the whole process again and try another dog. And bonding with the dog is the most important aspect of the introduction. So we spent a week sort of myself as a handler to become a team. And in that week, you're on a leash, you're tethered together. And that week is meant to bond. And Abby and I bond the first night. And from there, she's never been very far from me. She sleeps right beside me. She wakes me up in the middle of the night if I start. And the best part is she can intervene before it becomes a problem. For example, if I start tossing and turning, she'll give me a nudge and wake me up and get me out of it, and then I go back to sleep. In the past, I would have the nightmare, and then I couldn't get back to sleep, so my sleep was highly interrupted. With driving, it wouldn't be someone just cut me off. It would be 4 minor incidences, and then my temper would grow and grow and grow, and then would be one incident that I would then turn homicidal, and I would perform very dangerous things, chase people, cut people off that had wronged me. In that, dogs are trained to detect cortisol, and when I'm driving, the first incident of someone upsetting me, I don't even know I'm upset yet, but she does. So all of a sudden, when she comes over in my truck and gets on my lap and starts giving me a kiss, that's a reminder to me to calm down, possibly slow down a bit, and just relax. And 9 times out of 10, when she does that, it's after someone. So what I do is I purposely get that car out of my view. So if I back off, or I'll take another road, and then the situation's gone, and I continue on like nothing happened. So there's so much that with her, and then last year, as you're aware, she was severely attacked by another dog, and I had to nurse her back. And there's more to it than just nursing a service dog back to health. In that, I can get her healthy, but can I get her to work again? Because she's now suffered a traumatic event, and dogs get PTSD as much as anyone else. And my biggest fear was that she would lose her ability to be a service dog with the fear of other dogs. So I immediately brought my son's dog over, and I had to nurse her back, and then we started again with training, and she's back to 100%. So we take care of each other, and like I said, I would not be here today without her. I couldn't leave my house. I couldn't even dare considering something like shopping in Costco. But as I've had her now, at the local shops in town, I can reduce my need for her. So as I get better, and for example, at school, my plan is probably the first week I'll need her till I settle in and meet people. And then and like any medication, I can start to wean myself off to it. I don't need to bring her to school every day, so that'll be my decision, and when I'm comfortable. And eventually, in a year or two, she may become just a pet, as I feel I don't need, and I've banished some of the demons from my head. But she'll or we'll certify again in 2 years, and I'll maintain her vest. But that's my option, and my eventual goal is to now that Adamus has now in our own organization, is I want to become a trainer within the organization, and then volunteer to train a dog to give to another vet, because that'll be my thank you for receiving the help that I got, if I can help one more vet. So,
well, it is encouraging to hear that not only is Abby of service to you, but that she can transition to be a pet, because that's something that people often think about with seeing eye dogs, what a difficult life they have. And they, as well as service dogs, are really such extraordinary creatures that it sometimes hurts to think that they're always in stressful situations. So you mentioning that this is a transition and that you're moving into a more normal relationship is really good to hear. Is that standard?
that is typically standard. In some cases, it depends on the vet. In some cases, you have a vet that already has a dog that's had basic obedience training, and then what Mark can do is train that dog to a level of to be certified as a service dog. Abby is two completely different dogs. When her vest is on, she's working. She knows she's working, and you also have to remember when she's working, all of her senses are going right now. So it's as tiring for an hour of her wearing her vest as it is an hour of playing ball. So you have to always keep that in mind. So I don't put the vest on unless she's working. And when she's working, she turns into a completely different dog. When the vest is off, she's a pet. And she runs around and plays like any other Jack Russell and And as you've seen her with other dogs and all that, and she acts as crazy as a Jack Russell. Second I put the vest on, she knows she's working.
And yet, when you're at home, she doesn't wear her vest, but she's still
She can go
totally sensitive and tuned into you.
Exactly. It doesn't stop her her reactions and interventions, like we call it, interventions, because that's just now instinctive for me. We're on such a connected path that will always be there. She doesn't need her vest on for that, and like sleeping at night. It's just out in public where I need her to then be obedient and, you know, walking through a Tim Hortons, you can't have her, you know, looking at people's food. Standing in the checkout, you can't have her sniffing the chocolate bars. So she's got to act perfect, and she knows the vest on, I'm working. But the other work is just her natural instinct. So she can still be crazy little Jack Russell, crazy little Abby, but then when there's an incident that I need, if I all of a sudden lost my temper right now, and she didn't have her vest on, she would immediately intervene, and as you've seen on the one video, yeah, so that's just an automatic instinct now.
So before Abby, you had dogs, you had some experience with dogs, you had some inkling of what dogs are capable of?
Yeah, but I didn't really know about the service dog program. My other two dogs are two boxers, and one's 9 and one's 8. And in fact, they were with my son, but when Abby was injured, I brought Diesel, the oldest boxer, over, just to get over her fear of dogs. And I didn't want her scared, because if she's got a fear of other dogs, she can't be a service dog. Yeah, in most of my life, I've always had dogs. And talking with my therapist, even as a child, we normally had a dog of some description. And I was always the caretaker. So I was getting a lot of therapy as a child and didn't even realize it, because the dogs were my closest friends, and because I didn't socialize much. And the connection between me and animals has always just been there. And I think that's why it's been so successful with me. So.
Well, there is no doubt about it that your compassionate side was fed by these amazing creatures, because there's no denying that some poor dogs have had a rough go of it, and the worst of them has come out, and I wouldn't put it past saying that those who are vicious and mean are suffering from some form of PTSD in reaction to mistreatment or whatever traumas they've suffered. But it has never, ever since I've been familiar with the Audiamus program, and Marc Lapointe, one of the co-founders, and his other co-founder, Chris Loans, it amazes me. There's no end of what these creatures are capable of doing. And luckily, now they're going to be doing some scientific studies, and I hope, and I know that you're involved in those as well. So, isn't it fascinating how everything in life seems to come together, and all of a sudden it just makes sense? Oh yes, all that needed to happen.
Yeah, it's without the turmoil of certain events, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And luckily, I had an opportunity to realize the damage I was causing to myself and my family and my friends with my alcohol problem, and realize where that stemmed from, and get help. It's taught me that I can be more than what I was.
Thank you very much for watching and your interest in health, and let's make it something that we always keep in our minds. It's all part of life, the wonderful mystery of life. See you with the next episode.